Tell me how you write. You know, so many people talk about the theory of writing, but nobody ever really just says, this is how I do it. How do you do it?
Before I say how I do it, I think I want to be clear that I know there's no one right way to do
Right.
it. I'm going to share how I do it. It doesn't mean that that's the way that you should do it, but I do recommend in my classes that try some other ways.
Yeah.
What is it that you have to lose? I most often start with a title. I want a concept that's going to be really unique to me. And what I always tell people in my workshops is, if you can imagine, there are 1,200 songs in the pile. Or if you're an artist, there are 1,200 artist packages in the pile. You've got to give them a reason to pick you, or to pick yours, over everybody else's, or they won't. I mean, it's just that simple.
Okay.
And being perfectly well crafted and really good is a great start.
But I'm just a creative person, Jason. I don't want to be pigeonholed. I don't want to write in some sort of formulaic way. So talk to me about songwriting.
Okay, I totally respect that, and there is nobody putting a gun to your head or anybody else's head, but what I do is I study the common denominators across the board in hit songs, in different genres, and I look at, why are these songs successful? What are they doing lyrically? How are they approaching things? What are they doing melodically, groove-wise, chord-wise? Why are these songs connecting with millions and millions of listeners, and these are not? Well, if you are writing from your heart and from your soul, but you're not incorporating the tools and the techniques that these songs are incorporating, and you're not getting what you want yet, it might be time to try something different. And I'm telling you, I came from a place of just finding the whole concept of structures and formulas abhorrent. I mean, I felt like that was the antithesis of creativity. How dare you try and tell me to squash my creative soul into a formula bullshit box? I realized at some point that the structure is how we deliver the message. It has nothing to do with the message. The listener has grown up their entire life listening to the radio, hearing songs that are structured with verses, with choruses, with bridges, with rhymes. They don't know when something is wrong, why it's wrong. It just doesn't connect. It doesn't feel right. I don't really care what you feel when you write the song if I don't feel anything when I hear the song. But when it's time to write melodies, and sometimes I start with a melody, I would rather not be locked into chord changes. I'm not a guy who's going to sit there with a guitar or a keyboard and riff on some chord changes and then impose melody onto those changes. The reason that that doesn't make sense for me is I've never met anybody who walks down the street humming chord changes. The deal is, we want to write melodies that stick in the brain, not chord changes. So to me, it makes sense to focus on the most memorable, catchy melodies. So if you study the songs that are hits on the radio, you will really hear so much repetition, so that the melody, the groove, the rhythm keeps getting repeated to burn in the brain. If you establish a melody on line 1, and then you go to a new place on line 2, and another place on line 3, nobody can grasp it. And then the other aspect, that's probably one of the most important ones, and believe me, I'm trying to take a 2-hour thing and squish it down to a minute. The other aspect would be using phrases that are pretty short. Because it's hard to remember something.
Musical phrases or lyrical?
Musical phrases.
Okay.
But if you think about it, you can only have a short musical phrase if it goes with a short lyrical phrase. If your lyric is a month long, how are you going to set this to music that's going to sound melodic?
What would you say to people who would say, well, great, Jason, I understand what you're saying, but aren't you just encouraging us to dumb it down?
You can call it what you want. My goal is to communicate melodically and lyrically, to come up with something that is going to stick in somebody's brain. And if that requires dumbing it down, I'm all for it. I personally don't want to be Steely Dan or Gershwin
Right.
or Tchaikovsky, I admire each of them to the nth degree, but when I'm trying to write a pop song that people are going to sing along with, that's not my goal.